Hi guys, it's Kimberly. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are just getting familiar with me, I am a soul coach and intuitive advisor, helping twin flames and those along the ascension journey, anyone who is waking up, getting into their divine purpose, divine path, wanting to know more about these soulmate twin flame connections. I'm here to help you integrate your world. And I know it can be really tricky to do that because we don't always know the way to our pathway that is the clearest path, the highest path. It gets mucked up. We get confused, right? We don't always know the tools or have the tools for our healing and integration. And we certainly don't always understand these soulmate and twin flame relationships. So that's why I'm here to talk to you today. So today I wanted to really hone in on, why is this connection gripping me? Why are these connections so gripping? And so I know for those of you who have been in these types of really deep soul connections, that you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't have to say, gripping, what? Like, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. They grip you. So I want to tell you a little bit about my own personal stories, and perhaps this will help you understand a little bit better. So I've told this a little bit before in past videos, but I'll just kind of give you an overview, give you a landscape so you can understand. Because as you all know, we have connected because I have identified myself as a twin flame. Most of you have at some point on this journey. And, but I want to let you know that my awakening, I was always intuitive, but my awakening started when I was about 16, when I met a soulmate. Somebody who definitely I had traveled across lifetimes to reconnect with in this lifetime. I was 16. I didn't know much about much. I think teenagers are a lot, I was smart, but I wasn't, I don't know. I think teenagers are a lot smarter now they're just exposed to so much more. So I would just say that, like, I was book smart, and I had a lot of common sense, and I was very intuitive, but I didn't know how intuitive I was at that time. So I think because, at that time, there were like cell phones, there was no internet, like we weren't exposed to phenomena like this. And, so I was 16, and you're probably, naive and innocent and all of that. And, connected with a soulmate who I was having like a complete, like what a lot of you go through on the twin flame path. I was going through at 16, where I was having signs and synchronicities everywhere. I would always know when I would see him or bump into him, like weird, crazy, synchronistic, like you couldn't make this up. And at 16, I just trusted it. I really knew that I had been intuitive from an early age, and I really knew that, I just never second guessed myself. I just knew. And it was interesting too, because a lot of times I would get the signs as a foreshadowing, and I ended up developing a language with the signs where I could identify quickly what was about to happen, what was going to happen, and like they were speaking to me so clearly. But this was all around this one connection. I mean, that's it. Like this wasn't just like miscellaneous signs and synchronicities. It was like the depth of this connection was so immense. Now, on the 3D level, like this person wasn't, the timing wasn't right, and this person wasn't, very committed at the time, and but it was someone who was very pivotal for my growth. And for my evolution, someone who sparked my own desires for travel and worldliness, and because that was sort of how he was, and I recognized that in him, and it helped me to grow. I spent many years feeling very haunted by the grip of that connection. And I couldn't explain it to anyone. Like they would, people would say like, oh, that's your first love. Like, of course, and it wasn't that. It was just like, I remember even well after we broke it off, like just I still get signs for this person. So, and I still feel the connection. So those connections don't go away. Okay. But the difference is when I was in it, I was like very attached, very hung up, wanting more, feeling rejected, like all those things that we go through, right, in the twin flame journey. So fast forward, I think I finally got over that by the time I was like 21, maybe. And at 22, I met another soulmate. This time it felt very different, though. It was a different feeling completely. But the way that it happened was like uncanny. I was following signs. I was literally just playing with this. I knew how hyper aware I was, right? Because that had blown open for me at 16. I mean, I was always aware, but I was like hyper aware through that connection that opened me up at 16. Like license, you guys see like license plates and signs. And I mean, I can't even describe to you all the crazy things that would happen. I was a teenager and I was trusting in it. So by the time I was 22, and the way I met this other person at 22, like I said, I had actually started seeing swans at the time. And I was just like, why am I seeing the swans everywhere? So, my girlfriend and I took a staycation, we went someplace local, had got a hotel and the spa and the whole thing. And, everything about the swans guided that. Okay. So it was like following all the swan signs. It was this whole funny thing. She and I were giggling about it ahead of time, like no idea that what was about to happen was that two worlds were going to collide, like where we were going to come across lifetimes again to meet. And, so I met this person and it was like immediately, not only was it a gripping, like soul connection, just like immediately, like I felt it. But immediately I felt our last life together. I actually was having full-on flashbacks of it. And it was so deep. It was like so profound. And I could see our past lives. Like I could see all the characters that were in this current setting. I could see what was like the whole connection to the past life and what the past life felt like and all of that. And that was actually a lifetime of what felt like the 1920s. So this was the first time I had really come in contact at age 22 with my past lives. I was sure of it. It was being shown to me so clearly. It was just like a veil had lifted. And it was very weird because when I was in person with this person, of course, I was, attracted to them. And there was a great friendship and a connection and all of this. But we didn't live near each other. We lived far. And he was coming out of a divorce and it was just not good timing. So we sort of formed like a friendship, but I just loved him and I didn't know why. I couldn't understand why I loved him so much. On the 3D sense, like, yeah, it wasn't the right time. And even like when you looked at the two of us, by that point, I was very, very worldly and he wasn't so much. We were very different. Like he was a very simple person, very simple. And I couldn't understand how I had a connection that was so deep with someone who was so simple. And there was almost like a disjunct, you know what I mean? Like it was like I would be sitting with him and we would talk about like sort of this simple, shallow conversation. And I would be like, oh my God, why do I love him? I remember sitting across from him thinking like, oh my God, what is it? Like, why do I love him so much? And that went on for it was a friendship. Like we had deep love for one another. I know he loved me too, but it was never going to be more than that. And actually the heartache of that propelled me along my journey because I remember being in so much heartache about it. And I didn't know why. Like it was unexplainable heartache. It was just like my heart was breaking across lifetimes. I could feel the pain of so many lifetimes of us not being able to get it together, or be together. Or I felt like he still really loved his ex-wife in this lifetime. And yeah, sure, that brought up some stuff for me at that time in my life. But I think at 22, I wasn't ready to do this type of work, this healing work. And so instead of, like dealing with myself like we do in this twin flame journey, it just propelled me. Like it just propelled me. I just kept following the signs. I remember I was at a time in my life where I was traveling for work a lot. Like, so I was always on trains, airplanes. I was everywhere. And everywhere I would go, I would meet the likeliness of him, or there would be crazy signs, crazy synchronicities. And I began sharing this with him. And he was, again, a simple person, a simple sort of in the box person, and he would be like, you're crazy, or you're a witch or something, but he, after a while, I think we had about 5 years of going back and forth, or maybe it was less than that. Maybe it was like must have been like 3 or 4 years of, having a friendship. And I moved a couple of times, and, there was distance, and we just had a love for one another. There was just a love. And like, it got to the point where we went through periods of not talking to each other, where my feelings got hurt, or I didn't understand why he couldn't give me more. I remember going through that. I remember but each time I felt that heartache, it propelled me. And it was like every time it propelled me, I was out in the universe, traveling, doing my career, whatnot. And like, I was like an open vessel for the signs. It was crazy. I went on like a 2-3 year journey of just completely immersed in signs with him. It was nuts. And it was because we were at a distance, because we didn't see each other all that often. When we would come together and see each other, like, it would rock my world, because I would often feel like the person that I'm sitting with is not the same, like, it's not the same feeling as the depth of the connection that I have when I'm not with him. Does that make sense? And it would take a little while to acclimate. Not that I didn't love him or wasn't attracted to him, or, but it was just like, there he was, simple guy. And there I was, like, feeling all of this depth and this layer of connection, like, that was unexplainable. And I could feel the lifetimes, and I could feel this grip. I couldn't let him go. I couldn't understand. I think in that relationship, though, like, there was much more of a love, like just a pure, like, love. I remember really wanting the best for him. I remember him really wanting the best for me. And somewhere in that time, at the sort of end of that 4-year period, I did meet my ex-husband. And again, that sort of happened out of me being propelled from this pain, which is so crazy too, because my ex-husband and I met on an airplane, and it was predicted by a psychic. And that came because it was the first time I ever went to a psychic. And, I was in heartache with that first soulmate relationship in my 20s. And a friend sort of led me there, and she had told me how I was going to meet like this person on the airplane. And I just allowed myself to be guided. I allowed the pain to propel me. It was like, I have books. I have a friend of mine kept them for me. I don't even know if I have them all in my possession, because she was really tapped into with signs and synchronicity. So like, I stayed at her house several years ago, and she brought out these boxes of like that time in my life. She had all of my journals and signs. Like, I mean, at that time we didn't have really cell phones, or maybe I had a flip phone, but I think like I just would clip out, like we would see things in books and magazines. I would see things, coming up on caller ID, and like different phone numbers on the clocks. And, like it was every day, all day, like intense sign immersion. And, so you think, okay, there I was like 22, 23, 24 going through this. And I had already been cracked open by one soulmate, and, trusting in the signs, and then following this journey of being guided by the signs that was being propelled by the heartache I was in, with another grip of this, soulmate love. And it really shaped my life. Like, I have to say, like, it shaped my life. Like, I wouldn't have, so many things wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been propelled by the pain, if I hadn't been following the signs. It really did lead me to a higher path. Not the highest path that, like, cracked me open for my healing, but that came a bit later. So those relationships, even though they weren't like fully committed together relationships, they were a connection that went on for years, that I was in signs and synchronicities for years. And yeah, did I at 22, 23, 24 years old ask myself, like, I don't get it. Why? Of course I did. Of course. But then I also got so accustomed to it, and I got so good at interpreting the signs, and I got so, I just came to a place where this is what I came up with. I remember reading Brian Weiss's book, Only Love is Real. Have you guys read that? I highly recommend that you read it. I mean, my philosophies are a little bit different. I would take it like maybe a few steps further now that I know what I know. But he does talk about how he says that there's one soulmate. I already know, I can already tell you that you don't just have one soulmate that comes across lifetimes to meet you. You have many, and you have many people that you're working karma out with. And those can be, there's like more of the karmic lessons, and those can also be gripping, very much so, for different reasons. The two relationships that I just mentioned, I think were gripping because I could, the connection was so palpable, and the past life, the feeling of the connection to the past lives were so palpable. But the one thing I can say is standing now and looking back in hindsight, is that those two relationships shaped me into who I was, like propelled me to be more, propelled me on my journey, propelled me. And I don't ever regret like having that experience of being so immersed in the signs and synchronicities. And I mean, it really was an awakening, right? It really was an awakening. I remember actually it was at 22. I'm 39 now. So at 22, this was 17 years ago, I became privy to the 1111 phenomenon. And we did have computers, and it wasn't that long ago. I remember going on the computer and printing out all of these, sheets, and like, what is it? And I knew it was a phenomenon 17 years ago, and it was all over the web, and people were seeing 1111, back then, and it was like one of those things that it was just about awakening, and it still is. That's what it is. It's about you waking up, and I'm so glad that I have journals of those signs and that I documented all of that stuff, because it helped me even believe in it more. It helped me like get lost in the wonder of it. And I really think that that's what enabled me to transmute the pain. And if I hadn't transmuted the pain, I wouldn't have done half the shit that I did in my life. And I've done some pretty awesome things. So, I mean, I'm thankful for it. Definitely. Did it hurt at the time? Yeah. I mean, yes, it felt like bad timing. It felt like rejection. It felt like, that second relationship in my 20s, I remember having so many periods where I'd be like, I can't talk to you anymore. I can't talk to you anymore. And then we wouldn't talk for like 2 or 3 months. And then it would open back up again. And it would open back up like closer, more heart to heart. But yeah, so anyhow, I don't even know. I didn't have the scripted. I just wanted to talk to you like very matter-of-factly and just kind of give you some insight. So fast forward, got married. Obviously, that was also a soulmate type of relationship. It wasn't as gripping for me. He felt more like a new soul. I would always say my ex-husband felt like more like a new soul. We didn't have that. It was definitely destined and all of that, and fated, and there was a recognition there, but it wasn't like those other relationships. So then I divorced around the age of 30, and I began dating, and I ran into a lot of karmic people at that time, because it was time at that time in my life to heal myself, right? There were patterns I had not healed. There was shit that I kept running into. Again, it was like I kept running into myself in these relationships, and a whole series of karmics came in for me that were hard. And that's how I got cracked open and ran into my soul coach and started coaching and healing myself at that time. Again, those were those were very gripping connections, but I think they were gripping for a different reason. Do I believe that we recognize our karmics from past lives? Yes, we're bringing in karma. We are contracting with these people to, clear the karma, to play out the lesson again, to relearn the lesson. But I think the reason why those connections grip you is because of your own wounding. And that's why I think going through that series of karmic relationships that were really hard, like narcissistic and just yuck, when I was running into myself, this was like the big game changer for me. Because it was like, whoa, I need to look at myself. So and I did. And, so the grip of those, though, the thing about those types of relationships, like the karmic relationships, is when you're in it, you feel like, oh my God, I can't live without that person. I can't let them go, And, but the thing is that because it's really just an illusion, it's more you. It's more of you, like needing to heal your own wound. And there's some lesson that you are needing to learn and to heal within yourself. That grip is often an illusion, because the grip is much less about the connection. It's much more about the piece of you that needs to be healed within that connection, that you're identifying as whole, like with the other person. So I found personally that those connections that were more karmic, once the lesson was learned, it may have hurt, it may have not ended well, it may have been, not. And I may have said I was really in love while I was in it, but I'll tell you, those were the ones that it was so easy to get over. They did not grip me afterwards. I did not hang on to them. It wasn't hard to get over. I was like, when they were done, I dealt with myself, and then they were done. The feelings were done. So then fast forward to twin flame. So, the twin flame connection was different for me because I had a lot of my healing under my belt, not all of it, that's for sure. When I stumbled upon the twin flame journey, I did a lot more healing and have done since, an immense amount. And that was different because there was a recognition at first, right? So that feels familiar. I felt the lifetimes before I met this person. I felt the connection to the past lives before I met him. So it wasn't like I met him and then I could see the past lives. It was like leading up to meeting him, I was in the past lives that we were in. I was having signs, synchronicities, getting lost in this era. I've talked about this before. And then I met him and it was like, that's it. It was like instant recognition. And then I even did some past life regression after we met, and we had discovered that this lifetime that we were in, which was like, at least the one that was remembered or recalled, and that was the era that I was getting. When I got the context of that, I recognized that he had recognized me from that lifetime as well, and just through things that he said, and so it made a lot of sense. So that was just the propelling, once again, being propelled into heartache through separation, through that first separation we went into, and getting on this journey. I wouldn't be here today talking to you if I have my soul coaching practice or be serving mission. I was on a completely different path with my career. I mean, it was just, I went total, this time it wasn't total immersion with the signs. I mean, come on, I've been working with the signs for 20 something years. I don't need the sign. I know the signs. I've mastered the signs. Like, I'm total immersion now with my healing, with my gifts, right? Now I'm going all the way into my gifts. This is like propelling me into my gifts, my third eye, this notion of oneness, of wholeness, completely like where do I need to fine tune, my healing? Where's what's still in there for me? Which obviously you guys know that gets triggered in the twin flame mirror, right? So that was the deepest. all of the soulmate connections were deep pain, let me tell you. But this, with the twin flame, that was the deepest pain I had ever felt. And it was twofold. It was, the pain of separation with myself, and it was the grip of the connection, and not just so powerful. So I obviously transmuted again, right? Like, you transmute your pain. I went into full immersion. I think I've told you guys before, some of you are new, but I'll just say it again. I was watching 90 hours of videos a week, not twin flame readers, although I did a little of that, but I was watching, I was sponging information about psychology, ascension, gifts, this, that. Then I started taking courses and classes, and then I started just holding the free support group calls and bringing twin flames together, and, realizing that I could step into my gifts further through that vehicle. And, by the fall of that year, that was the spring 3 years ago, and by the fall of that year, I started my practice. And had the soul coaching certification and didn't know what I was going to do with it. Didn't really care, if I did anything with it. Just figured, that's something, I'll get to, or good to have in my back pocket. Didn't think I would actually be using it along with my full-blown intuitive and psychic gifts. So now, so with the twin flame connection, the thing about it, and that I realized too in hindsight, is there's something so gripping about it, but it also, for me at least, had a lot of the nuances of those karmic grips. So I feel like if I can summarize it in just my own opinion, and what I experienced, is it feels like if you took the soulmate relationships that I described, where you could feel the past lives, and it was just the depth of the connection that was gripping you, not really your own wounds and blinders, even though that was in there, but it wasn't. And then you mesh that with those karmic relationships, in which the grip is what you're not seeing, is what you have, what you need to heal within yourself. And you mesh those together. That's what my twin flame felt like. It was almost like every single relationship ever combined. That's truly how I could compare it. It was everything. It was I could feel the past lives. I could feel the grip of the soul connection. I had the telepathy. I meant to say that. Those other soulmates that I was telling you about with the connection, telepathy was always there. Huge. And they knew it too. It was crazy. So I want you to know, you don't just have telepathy with your twin flame. Once you open and awaken, you will find that you're having more telepathic connections with everyone, and that those that you choose, that you recognize and you choose to get into relationships with, if you guys are in separations, or if you're exploring, different, partnerships or soulmate relationships, not all of you are some of you I know are outside of the twin flame label, and you're going, okay, am I ever going to have this kind of connection again? And I'm going to tell you yes, because you just went through the awakening that I started when I was 16, and every single one of my relationships have been there on all levels: spiritual, emotional, telepathic, right? Mental, physical, the whole thing. With a twin flame, though, it is a heightened physical connection. It is a heightened emotional connection. It is a heightened spiritual connection. And like I said, it's one that for me propelled me on my journey in terms of mission, what I do in this world. I mean, it shaped my life. I'm so grateful for it. We set up that contract, right? And let's see, the grip of that connection, like I said, is kind of everything rolled into one. It was twofold. It was both my healing that I needed to do, in those karmic relationships, right? But the remnants of that hadn't been done, that needed to be pieced together, were accomplished through our separations. And every single separation that we had was so purposeful, because each time we separated, I was able to come into more alignment with myself. And I believe, and you guys might not believe this, but I believe that my soul contract with him is complete in this lifetime. I believe that we've set one another up for other things and people, and it feels very complete. But in another sense, it's still gripping, and I'm not going to lie about that. It grips me when I least expect it, when it's not mental thinking or attachment, because I don't have any attachment to it anymore. It's just certain days, it's just gripping, it's just there. The signs are there, and so I'm going to tell you how you can deal better with this, so it won't torture you. One is, you do have to work through the lines of fear within you. That means your root stuff, right? Which I talk about all the time in my videos, your childhood wounding, why you are the way you are, why you would pair up with someone who, like can't give you what you need, or who's triggering you, or what are the triggers? Let the triggers be your roadmap to your healing. And then utilize that to guide you into where you need to heal. Your triggers are always the indicators of where you need to go into healing. So think about it. Like, if you're in any of these connections and you've been triggered, okay, say to yourself, like, well, where is that trigger stemming from? Like, why is there so much charge behind that? Why do I want to react when, that button gets pushed, or why? And then sit with that, because, the roots are in your childhood wounding, and in your programming, and they're coming from fear. Because if you were in a state of just complete love, right, and you were able to sustain unconditional love for yourself and for others, you would be, whole. You wouldn't be, triggered by these things. So the triggers are the roadmap to our healing, and you must do healing at a deeper level to be able to release the attachment. Because the attachment, like the physical 3D attachment, where we feel like we need someone, we feel like we need them to complete us, we feel like we need an answer, or we can't go on without an answer, or we need to make it black and white, or we, that's all because we're attached in the 3D. And those attachments can only be kept alive through fear. And the fear stems from within us. So once you clear that and align with yourself and heal, which is a process, right? And as you guys know, I have tools for you for that. I mean, you can come to coaching with me. I have a 4-week intensive program that addresses every level of your healing. So healing the root issues, clearing the blocks. We go into inner child work. We do ancestral work. We do past life work. We help you clear out the negative thought patterns, and then we help you practice alignment, and coming into your own divinity. And then from there, how you then walk forward onto your mission, and now you're transformed, right? Because you're going through this process of evolution in which you're shifting from fear to love, essentially, is what's happening. So certainly knowing the roots of your fear, bringing that into light, healing through that, and then, whatever you need to do, forgiving, understanding after you heal, which is always at our child level, always at our root level. Every single thing, I will tell you, every single thing that got mirrored for me in my twin flame relationship, because it was the ultimate mirror of all those relationships. It was the ultimate mirror. It was the one that showed it all to me. It was the one that got me to do all the healing, all of it. And not saying that I'm all healed, but it got me to see every single piece of it. And yes, new little layers come up here and there, but even up until recent weeks, I've still been healing. So it's like, but I feel like so much has become, it has become whole. Like the sense of healing has even become whole. The pieces that felt like they've been missing for years are now in place. The understanding, the awareness, and so in that mirror, it's so important to look into yourself. yourself and see what's there for you to heal. And then while you're doing that healing, you can be transmuting your energy, whether it's pain or, just the desire to step into your fuller, potential. You can start to transmute towards that, and then be working on yourself behind the scenes and be working on the alignment, and all of that will help you step into a state of surrender, because all surrender is the absence of fear. It is a state of trust and love, and we can't get there when even we have the subconscious stuff still resonating or resounding, I should say, within us, right? It's like sending out a vibration. So we want to heal at the deepest level. That's number one. That has to be done. You cannot skip over that, because otherwise you're going to keep going in these cycles of feeling so attached to the other person and needing them in the 3D, and the codependency and that grip that they have is not the real grip of the connection. It's just the grip that you need to heal. Now, when you heal within yourself and you are more able to sustain a state of surrender, then the purity of the connection can come through. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is about like me right now, when I just have a day where I'm like, I don't think about this person. I don't consciously go there. Like, I'm not really still grieving it, but it's just like all of a sudden, right through that, when you're not expecting it, the purity of the connection can step in. And the other day I received messages all day long in which he was telling me that he loved me. And the thing about it that I have to tell you is, when you get the signs and synchronicities, and I've said this in my signs video, and someone just said that I had like 19,000 views on the video. I never look back at my old videos, but there is a video that I guess that has 19,000 views that I say this, but I'm more evolved now in my journey, so I'm probably going to say it differently than I did back then. So listen to this. So if you watch that video, I think I'm wearing an orange top. Listen to this message, because I'll probably say it a little bit differently. When we receive the signs, there's nothing more for us to do. Isn't that such a relief? So when you receive the signs, there's nothing more for you to do other than to listen. So we want you to listen. We want you to hear what's being spoken, or whispered, as I always say, because that's what the signs feel like. They're whispers. And if we don't listen to the whispers, they'll get louder and louder and louder. And when the signs get louder and louder, sometimes they'll increase in frequency. Sometimes they'll increase in their loudness or their echo that they have with us if we're not listening. So the only thing you really need to do is to acknowledge and listen. You want to acknowledge it. Oh, I'm seeing that sign. Okay, now I'm going to listen to, what is that saying to me? Is that, what do I innately feel? What do I intuitively get from that? Ask yourself that. And then I know that's where everyone errs, because then you start to doubt and you're like, oh my God, I want to know, what does this mean? What does this mean? Then our analytical minds come in, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? I want to figure it out. Is he thinking of me? Is she thinking of me? What does this mean? What does it mean? Give it time. Give it time, because the thing about it is, you're not supposed to try to figure signs out. The signs will develop a language with you. You will know. If they're not literal, a lot of times they will be literal. Literally, you will find things that say like I was finding things all day that said, I love you, from my twin, literally, from him, old things that I thought were gone were just popping up. So that's at some level his higher self coming through. It's like when we meet our twin flames, or any of these soul type connections, when we meet them in our dream state, we get higher self messages quite frequently. We're either playing out our fears, the stuff that we need to work through. Those are good indicators of what to work through when we're in our waking state. Or we're receiving messages from that person's higher self. And it can also often feel incongruent to what the 3D is, right? It can feel like, well, I don't get it. Because in my dream, I felt a loving embrace from my twin flame. But in the reality, we're not even talking. That's the tricky part of these connections. Because that's the purity. That's higher self is that higher self connection, that dream state, like that thing, like I felt a loving embrace from my twin. That is the purity of the connection. But that gets covered up as we do this 3D dance. Now, if you're doing it with your twin flame and you're in a relationship and you're mirroring and you're running and you're chasing, you can see how the purity of the connection gets covered up. In fact, I would tell you, and most twin flames that I work with, and I work with hundreds of them, would tell you that separation is profoundly better. Because in the separation, you can feel the purity of the connection. It's not covered up by all of this ego stuff and all this masking and all this running and chasing and all these behaviors and like that makes it so confusing and amok. And you know, you're in the illusion of time, space, reality, and you're in the illusion of like your ego identity and you're seeing through the lenses of your wounds and you're reacting from that, and it's exhausting. But I'll tell you, once you heal, you can sustain a level of having 5D connection all the time. It doesn't have to be just when you're in your dream state or when you go into a meditation. I mean, you can stay open and unattached with your twin. I think there's another video that I made a while back that was like, how do I hold space? Someone mentioned it to me recently. A client of mine said that they watched it. So I remember making it, and it was like, how do I let go of attachment and hold space versus wait, you know? And thing is if you're waiting, you're attached. And if you're holding space, you're doing you. You're like moving forward on your own path, and you're able to just send a beam of love that person, not need anything from them, not expect. It's about the releasing of expectation and needs. And those expectations and needs stem from our own fear. Well, then a lot of people say, but I'm human. Like this connection is gripping me. But the thing about it is that, like, when you just feel the purity of the connection and you have worked through all of your lines of fear and that's released and you're not dwelling on it, you're not thinking about it, you're not calling it into, because believe me, and I spent years doing this too, where I could call things into me. I could pull them right in if I thought about them enough, right? Like, so sometimes you guys get fixated on the signs. Don't do that. When you see the sign, acknowledge it, listen, lean into what it's saying. If you're not sure, just kind of go, smile upon it, put it in your back pocket, remember that, but just let it go. Because chances are you're going to receive, if you don't know what it means, you'll receive another sign, you'll receive another message that will help you clarify that and develop your own language with the signs. And if you're not listening at all, those signs, your guides, your people, your team are going to speed up those signs. They're going to send them with more intensity and more. They're going to say hello. They're going to hit you over your head, right? Sometimes literally. So listen, acknowledge, listen, right? Smile upon it, release it, like file it away, but release it. Don't attach to it. When we attach, we go, well, what does it mean? Well, oh my God. And then we start attaching to it. Then we start saying, well, give me another sign. Well, send me that again. Well, I need to see that again. I need a confirmation. And it's like, no, just say, I received it. I see it. I'm not sure. I have an intuitive knowing of what that might mean. File it away. Keep going with your life and keep staying open. Keep receiving. Repeat. Keep doing that on repeat. Pretty soon you're going to know what those signs mean. I guarantee it. And you usually know when you first receive them. You usually know intuitively, but I think we have a hard time trusting it. So it takes sometimes like seeing the pattern to be able to validate it for ourselves and trust it. And I always say, we live in a technological age now. It's not like back when I started seeing the signs. So, I mean, take a picture of it. It helps you build evidence for that so that you can believe in it, so that you can trust your own intuition. It's not something that you need outside validation from, but sometimes it's good to keep a little journal. Like, remember I said with that soulmate that I had in my 20s, I kept journals and clippings and newspapers and magazines, and I remember finding things on like CD cases, and I mean, it was just everywhere, the signs. And it was good. It was very good practice to keep them. It's so much easier in this day and age that we live in now, because you can just like take pictures of things, right? Take pictures of the license plate or the price sticker or the sign that you're seeing. And it's a good practice, because I think if you're in doubt of your own intuition, it'll help you trust in it. So when you have the grip of like the twin flame come through, the difference is that in the purity of the connection, when you're totally surrendered and there's no like 3D attachment, you're human. It might make you feel sad for a minute, or you might feel really connected. You might even feel like, do I need to reach out to this person? Is this person reaching out to me? Or you might need to just sit with it and say like, okay, like, why is this message coming through at this time? But the thing is like, try not to read into it or attach to it or look for more of it, or just know that it's their higher self sending you something and sending you love, sending you something to let you know that all is well on the other side, outside of this illusion, outside of this separation, outside of this, 3D back and forth, whatever you're going through. And even like, and I'll say that like I never feel like I will not see the signs for those soulmates that I was telling you about. And I still do on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion. And I know that connection is still alive. It's just like this little nod wink, like it's a reminder. Okay. There have been times at one point I reconnected with, the soulmate from my 20s, and we just kind of had, a friendship. It was a little awkward, I think, but that was prompted because of the signs. And it turned out that at that time I had moved and didn't have the same phone number, and he had been looking for my phone number and didn't know how to get in contact with me. And I ended up reaching out to him, and he was like, oh my God, I like wanted to hear from you, and I didn't know how to get in touch with you. And we just kind of were buddies for a bit. And so life has pulled us in different directions. And that just felt like, I think when I got into, there's always residuals there, right? Like from the connection, not from the 3D, but like at the 3D, I remember really being able to see him going like, oh yeah, we were never right for each other anyhow. But from a higher level, that was still there. And so I think when I got into a new relationship, I just felt like I needed to release that. It just felt right to do that. But I will always have that connection with those people, those true like soulmate people that opened me up to the signs and everything. And with the twin flame, it's going to be the same thing. Even if the soul contract is done in the 3D, I will feel him for the rest of my life. I am quite sure of that. But it's not going to torture, torment me, right? Because I have done the work on myself to release the fear, to release the attachment. And so it makes this journey much more easy to navigate, right? I hope that makes sense for you all, and that just sharing that helps you in some way. If any of you want to work with me or check out the intensive program, I'm taking the registrations now for the intensive program. It starts in April. There's a deposit in February, a deposit in March. It's affordable. It's tons of value. It's 4 weeks of intense healing, integrating. You've got me as your personal coach. It's pretty awesome. Or you have soul coaching. If you don't know where you stand in your, twin flame connections, you want intuitive guidance, or you want a twin flame guidance session to really understand what the soul contract is, I can help you with that. Check that all out on spiritualmaterialgirl.com. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Mwah. Bye.